Welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm your host, Scott, Toy Guru Neitlich. And like you, I am a toy collector. But unlike you, I'm also a toy professional. Well, unless you are a toy professional, in which case I am more like you. But the point is, these are videos about the toy industry from someone who's been in it. And I want to talk today about broken promises. What do I mean by broken promises? Well, sometimes things are promoted to fans like finishing the 96 or starting a subscription program to offer figures online. I'm not talking about Matty Collector, I'm talking other companies mentioning this. Or, again, not to pick on Hasbro, because I'm not trying to, but figures get dropped from line simply because they get forgotten about. Or on the other side of the aisle, and the other side of the country, Mattel, when they held their San Diego Comic-Con panel in 2015, told everyone that there was a real Ghostbusters line coming out right around the corner, and it never happened. So why is it that as toy collectors, we do feel often that companies are breaking promises to us or teasing us with things that never happen? Sometimes, obviously, it's related to logistics or costs, but is it really because ideas are just being taken and thrown away in the dumpster, that they get sort of test ballooned to fans and collectors, and if they don't get the right reaction, then toy companies are like, okay, well, we're done with this? Yes, that does sometimes happen, but believe it or not, it's more often because things are forgotten. And I don't mean that it's one person saying something and then completely forgetting that they said it. It's a company as a whole, and it goes down to the way people move positions. And they have sort of the old way versus the new way of doing things. And the position that's important to look at is the brand manager. This is the person who is sort of captaining the ship. They know when to sail, and they know when it's time to cast anchor.
You called that an anchor?
They're in charge of the vision, the overall future of the brand and where they want to take it, how they want it to look, what costs they need to hit, and more importantly, they're there to help make sure the team and the vision work together so that whatever direction a brand wants to go in, that the team working on it, the designers, the packaging designers, costing, logistics, legal, all of the different functions that happen in order for a toy to get to market, all have to be guided by, a shepherd, if you will. And that's what the brand manager is all about. They're the person that is creating a vision, but more importantly, making sure the team sticks to it and follows through on their vision. Well, that's wonderful, but what happens when things change and get shifted around and the dance steps are different than they used to be? One day someone's in charge of a brand, and the next day...
Move along.
So why is this especially a factor in toy making? Well, with toys, there's a 3-year cycle from concept to shelf. And that doesn't really change. It can be sped up a little bit, but for the most part, that's set in stone. Brand managers, on the other hand, at most toy companies, and this is not a Hasbro thing, a Mattel thing, this is kind of all toy companies, tend to change roles every 2 years, which means that they're not in their role long enough to see a product go from concept all the way to shelf. There's an internal job rotation where people are moved around inside of a company quite often, and usually it's after 2 years, where suddenly you're working on one brand one day, and the next day you could be in games, or the girls division, the boys division, RC, all sorts of things. You could even leave marketing and go off to a different group. So companies do this because the large toy companies that have a huge number of brands want their employees to be well-rounded, so that if you have to step up and jump in, let's say somebody quits the company or there's a new acquisition, that they know that all of their staff is very well-rounded. It could jump in on any position. But this creates an endless cycle where brand managers aren't there on a brand long enough to essentially see their vision come all the way to market. And because of this, there's sort of a 3-step process that is become a vicious circle, if you will. So the first step is a brand manager comes into a brand and sees what it looks like and what's going on, and they probably have to clean up from their predecessor. And this could mean everything from cutting SKUs to adding SKUs to having to manage SKUs that are not selling at retail and figure out how they're going to fund a clearance sale. And a lot of times they have little information about what their predecessor was doing. All right, step two, all right, so now that you've cleaned up the previous brand and any issues it had with sales or costing, well, now the new brand manager wants to leave their mark on the brand and make it their own and bring it in the direction they want it to go in. So while it's great to have a leader that has a vision, the constant changing of leaders and the constant changing of vision is the issue. Toys, at the end of the day, are very sexy. They're fun to work on, and even people who aren't toy fans, when they're working on toys, they suddenly kind of become toy fans, and they want to be like, oh, I want to make this toy my own. And that sort of leads directly into step three. Right when a brand is reimagined by a new leader coming in and coming up with a new course of action.
Move along.
Now here they are moving from one brand to another. Usually not between companies, as I said. Usually this is an internal switch. So you could be moving within groups. You could move from one, boys action figure brand to another. You could move from girls to boys to games, all sorts of things. And this constant recycled step where the old brand managers are coming in and essentially sort of playing janitor to the previous brand manager, they're so busy, kind of quickly cleaning up financial issues and making sure things are set up so they could now put their stamp on the brand. How in the world do we get out of this? How do you break the cycle of this constant new leadership in toys?
I'm going to break the wheel.
Well, it's not so much breaking things, it's much more about embracing passion and finding brand managers that really want to be on a brand. Most are there in transition, but a perfect example of a hero is Daryl DePriest. He was on Star Wars for over a decade. Before that, G.I. Joe for just as long. He is a true toy fan, going out of his way to talk to the fan press and communicate with fans, but it wasn't just that, it was the fact that he was there for such a long period of time as the brand manager, the director of the brand, that it created continuity. It created one person on the brand for many, many, many years so that promises made one year could get fulfilled because it was the same leader. If it's the same leader leading a team for a long period of time, the brand is stronger, and those little promises that get made to fans have ways of being fulfilled because there's someone in the captain's seat that remembers making the promise. They probably made it themselves. It's not about changing the system. You're not going to get toy companies to stop rotating people every few years. It's just the way the companies are set up and the way they work as publicly traded companies. It is, in the end, good for the companies to have well-trained employees on all of their different divisions. So really the solution is finding that shepherd that wants to stay on a brand, that kind of makes a fuss and says, I don't want to move off this brand. I know it's sort of company policy, but keep me on this. Finding people who are passionate about the product they work on. When you have brand managers like that, then you have continuity, and that is what fulfills promises and ensures that the line sticks around. So finding a brand manager who can stick around means that the brand will also have long health on shelf and will hopefully garner even more fans for the future. I hope this video was insightful into why some promises don't get kept, why some do, and kind of the internal workings of how brand manager rotation affects that. Give me a like and a subscription because that tells YouTube to share this with more people. And that's what it's all about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.